Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join CognitivePath founders Geoff Livingston and Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the No Brainer podcast. We have an exciting and deep edition for you today. We're going to get into some philosophy about AI and how this is going to impact us as a human species, as well as some current developments that have happened. But before we get there, I'd like to say hello to my partner in crime, my bald brother of another mother, Mr. Verdino. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Geoff. How are you?
Very good. Thanks for joining me again for another crazy episode.
It's shocking that I still show up after all these episodes.
We've been doing this now. We're in 2.5 years in. And I think that's the best part about being every other week is that it's just enough. You don't feel like it turns into a slog every week. So, at least from the podcaster perspective. But anyway, we have a really cool episode. And before we introduce them, do you mind if I give our usual commercials?
Go right ahead.
All right. Everybody who's joining, please punch the like button on this episode. Share it with your friends. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. And if you can, do leave a review. You can find us, of course, in all the usual places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And with that, we also want to thank the Marketing Podcast Network for including us in their larger affiliate group. And with that, Mr. Greg, please intro our guests.
All righty. And before I do, I just want to point out, because this space moves so quickly and we are bound, I can feel it already, to get into some things that are current events as we're recording. We are recording this on Friday, July 25th. And I should probably say we're starting the recording at 10:07 or so, because probably by 10:08, the world will have changed yet again, for better or for worse. So we're really excited to welcome this episode's guests. We've got two for people who are watching us on video. You already know that because you've seen them waiting patiently. We've got Dr. Rebekka Reinhard and her partner, Thomas Vasek, joining us from Germany. They are I would say the masterminds, in a good way, behind Human Magazine. It's a magazine that I've been affiliated with for a while. I write I think a semi-regular column for them. I'm sure it is by a long shot the worst piece of content in the magazine every single issue. But it's a remarkable publication. It is they take a cross-disciplinary look at the way AI is evolving and how we as humans will and should and must evolve alongside it. They also have a new paper out called Smart Resilience for an Uncertain Age. I believe I got the name right. That collects dozens of essays from people in virtually every sector from across the globe, really looking at what resilience means in the age of AI and why resilience must evolve in the age of AI and what that means. So before we dive into the conversation, I want to welcome both of you. Say hello, Rebekka and Thomas.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Geoff. It's really a very great pleasure and also honor to be on your show from Germany and to do this transatlantic conversation in these times.
100%. How are you, Thomas?
Hello. It's so exciting for us. Yeah.
Very good. As you may have, maybe you can tell already that, Thomas, I think, is very much the traditional German personality. He says what needs to be said, crisp and precise, in a good way. So, as I mentioned the paper Smart Resilience, and you've, I think, made the argument that the traditional take on resilience is maybe necessary but not sufficient anymore, and that you're advocating for smart resilience in this new age of intelligence. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that means to you and why it is so important for people as we try to make sense of what's happening with AI all around us every day?
Maybe, Thomas, let me start just a little bit. I think as we are approaching the mid or the end of 2025, we can already see that things are accelerating in an ever increased way. Not only all things AI, but also geopolitics and also the whole multiple crises in the world. So we ask ourselves, what do we need as humans in this world? And we came to the conclusion, resilience in a traditional sense is not enough. Resilience in a traditional sense for us means practically bounce back. Try to come over some crisis and try to get back to the original state of things. But now, with all these crises, with this increasing speed that is developing, we think we need a bounce forward approach. And for us, resilience in this way needs absolutely to be based on intelligence, which means hybrid intelligence, human intelligence as well as artificial intelligence. I don't know, maybe Thomas wants to add one or two things.
Well, the idea is quite simple. I mean, resilience in the traditional sense means something like to endure, to endure crisis, as Rebekka said, to bounce back to the original state. But what we need today, we think, is a kind of what we call smart resilience that is proactive, that is smart, that is intelligent. And the idea is that we humans are, of course, very important for this kind of resilience, but not sufficient. Because we have to deal with all these complexities. So we need the capabilities of AI to better understand this complexity, to better predict proactively possible crisis, threats, whether military threats or catastrophes, pandemics, whatever. That's the meaning of smart resilience.
And what are your thoughts, Geoff? I want to give you a chance to chime in.
Yeah, I feel like that's really truthful. And it's particularly true here. I mean, I can't speak for what it's like now in Europe with the environment, but for us here, it's like we have a daily crisis, it seems like, or crises. And, I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's because the president is, one, bent on dominating media, and two, because he's toxic. And it's a bad combination. And I'm being nice. But the constant crisis, and then you see that also extend to the larger global environment with both the war in the Middle East and the war in the Ukraine, and then the various aspects that we're already dealing with just as a human society with all the different challenges that have occurred since the pandemic with supply chain, the environmental crisis that continues to escalate. It's never ending, right? So how do we function, right? Because otherwise, if you let this get to you, you're going to crawl into a ball in the corner and never function. And to me, it's almost like you're talking about perseverance. How do I rise above and just continue to be able to function and function well with the headwind that just never seems to go away.
In that regard, I wonder, to what extent it then becomes incumbent upon our institutions to help people build these skills, right? Of, not just surviving, but ideally thriving in the face of all this chaos that happens to also be happening at a time of unprecedented technological acceleration.
Yeah. And I would ask everybody on the podcast, can we rely on institutions now? Because I personally feel like that's part of the drag, if you would, that's holding us back on a daily basis, or can hold us back if we allow it to, is that these systematic institutions we used to rely on for justice, for decency, for at least attempting to do the right thing, they're not.
Absolutely. I would say that we need something like a whole society approach for this what is resilience. But there is obviously an interesting traditional objection against this concept of the whole concept of resilience. That simply says why teach people to endure crisis or catastrophes? Why don't we change things? Why don't we change the world? Yeah, that's. What do you think about that? What do you think about that objection?
I mean, I think it's legitimate in some ways, right? And I'd be curious to see what you all think. But it's there's an old saying: mood follows action, right?
Absolutely.
You have to take the action to get the mood.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, is part of functioning also taking a step against what we feel is working against us, first taking that step and then being able to function.
Right. Absolutely.
This sounds to us as Europeans very American. I think this is a great culture we can always learn from to really to get things done and to do things and to be on a mission in a very general sense. And I think it is this spirit we want to inject also a little bit in the German culture when it comes, to engagement for democracy, for good AI, for all things human and human-centric. Yeah, let's do it.
Right. In a sense, at least for me, smart resilience, in a sense, is just another word for learning. For not only adapting, but learning in a very pragmatic or pragmatist and American sense of an inquiry. Yeah. So kind of experiment. Yeah. Let's see all these crises, as a kind of experiments, to find out things, how things work, how we can improve things, how we can change institutions or whatever to make the world a better place.
There's a lot of, I think, different directions we can go with this. And we could probably spend the entire episode talking about nothing but this, right? And I think in a broad way we will. But queuing off a couple of things, I think certainly, Rebekka, you've mentioned the A word a couple of times already, America. And
we're sorry.
Sorry for what?
You know what? But you obviously come at this from a different perspective. I mean, here in the U.S., and especially now with the new AI action plan, as it's called, there is very much of a United States versus China, and there will be one of those two superpowers will have world domination
versus the rest of the world. Yeah.
Right. There's an exceptionalism to it. Yeah.
And I'd love to hear your perspectives coming from the rest of the world, right? Kind of what is the general sort of, not just take, but I guess sort of the AI environment and the AI mindset and even just the AI promise and hope that comes out of an area like the EU. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? And what are your perspectives around how the EU plays relative to the United States or China or any other area of the world?
Okay, let me start. Well, okay, you mentioned this so-called AI action plan. Yeah. Now, when I read it, it was immediately clear to me. Okay, that's the let me say the Trumpist version. Yeah, that's the Trumpist idea. Yeah, of what it means. To what it means to dominate the world with AI, to have such a kind of super intelligence, which gives us which gives America unlimited power in every sense of the word. Now, that's definitely not the European approach, I would say. We have a different idea, for good or for bad. Yeah, well, I want to be cautious about that. Yeah, in Europe, we have the idea. First of all, we don't have the idea that AI is a tool of power. Yeah. So that's not the European approach. Um, we think about a kind of AI that is based on European values. Yeah. This is very important. We think also of European competitiveness, yeah, but not in this. I would say not in this bold, way. Yeah? Maybe it's not even the most important thing. Yeah, the Europeans are generally very cautious, when it comes to new technologies. Yeah, that's we don't have this this approach. Okay, let's do it, and let's embrace it. Yeah, but the European approach is more. Let's think about it. Yeah. But maybe Rebekka can.
Yeah. No, I just want to add or to emphasize this point. AI is no top priority. And this has also to do, of course, with the loads of money we're seeing that is being spent in the US, and Europe thinks they spend a lot, but in fact, we don't know. And when it is spent, where does it go? And when is it is distributed? And right now, maybe there's a lot of talking about technological sovereignty. Yeah, when it comes to Europe versus other states and the US, and we know we are not we are dependent on the cloud and on the US cloud providers, but it's always in a little bit in a hesitant way. And first we have to make sure that we have the regulations, but then there's the discussion. Okay, now the US president is very speedy, and he's very quick in implementing all these things, and it is now a top priority in the US. So maybe we don't need the EU AI Act anymore in that way we originally thought, but at the end, there's always a lot of discussion, and there's a lot of time that is passing because you need to find a consensus, which is very difficult, which also has to do with an important European value, of course, which is democracy, which is a good thing. But I think we are a little bit lost now in this very complex world about what is our place as Germany and as Europe.
That's interesting. Because, when you were speaking to that, Rebekka, and I know you're a philosopher and an ethicist, but you're getting down to it, what the problem, there are a few problems with the current administration's approach. It's very primitive in the sense that it's power dominant, as you had said, Thomas. And it does look at this as a way to dominate the world from a global standpoint. There is a whole bunch of ethic challenges with that. But the other problem with it is that ultimately it's a business thing and not war. It's not a war tool. It's not a weapon. It is literally software. And software is supposed to help us live our lives better, be more productive in an ideal state. And so one of the things that I think is unfortunate about the way the United States political structure has evolved over the last 20, 30 years as it's become fractured, divisive, polarized, and even perhaps unable to act in many ways, is that we've lost our ability to advocate for ourselves. And what I mean by that is protect ourselves, civil rights, human rights, that kind of thing. What GDPR did from a privacy standpoint, what the AI Act that Europe did, it forced our businesses to comply. Right. And what I mean by that is Europe may not be developing it, the technology, but Europe is one of the biggest markets. And it's not to Google's advantage, it's not to Amazon's advantage or OpenAI or anybody else to create 5 different versions of its software. It's a lot cheaper for them to simply create one version. And if the EU has the most rigorous regulations, we just provide that regulation to everybody. So I would counter and say you are providing the moral compass for AI because we are incapable of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that strikes me first and foremost about the AI Act is the utter lack of moral compass. I mean, between the full out, I mean, it's almost like Sam Altman's checklist. They checked every box,
He
right?
totally wrote it, right?
Right? So like the utter abandonment of any attempt at regulation, right? It sets up regulation as almost the opposite dichotomy from innovation, which is not true, right? Often innovation requires some component of regulation to set the guardrails and allow people and organizations to move forward quickly and effectively. But it basically utterly deregulates AI here in the States. But to Geoff's point, every company in the US that's building AI, every AI lab, every software company baking AI in is going to have to comply with international regulations, or they're not going to have an international market. But here in the States, the premise is, okay, we're not going to worry about the environment, the climate, the job loss, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People, we're just going to build, right? And then the second place where I think this shows up is in this sort of, and I guess it's more in one of the executive orders than it is in the actual action plan, but his concurrent executive order taking aim at woke AI, where essentially, and put aside the woke versus whatever, but essentially says that we will not apply any guardrails around what is ethical or right or morally correct or whatever. And that's a complicated thing, right? Rebekka, you know that. I mean, both of you do, but certainly Rebekka as a PhD philosopher, right? You know as better than any of us, or at least the two bald idiots, that ethics is not an easy thing, right? It's not, there is not black and white, but, this, they do seem, the US government does seem to be saying that if you stand for diversity, if you stand for ferreting out bias, if you stand for, these things that should be morally acceptable, at least, then we're not going to use your AI systems. And we know that in the absence of those guardrails, we end up with Grok, right? Where Grok is, as I'm sure this was global news when Grok literally declared itself Mecha Hitler a week or two ago. Something that has not been addressed, right? And we've got issues of LLMs and chatbots convincing people to harm themselves or harm others, in some case, with the people actually following through, right? There's a lot of stuff baked into that. And I do wonder, I'm not trying to go on to get on my soapbox and go on and on, but to Geoff's point, will regulations like the AI Act in Europe, will Europe effectively become the ethical barometer for AI, where the US just sort of, as we have in frankly many other areas since
abdicated,
just abdicate our soft power and our ethical or moral high ground, with air quotes, because I'm sure you can argue whether we've ever had.
Well, a very important question. I would say this so-called alignment question, is, of course, a very fundamental one for AI. Now, when it comes to the European AI Act, I would say there has been a big discussion on whether the UI AI Act is too strict, is too maybe it impedes innovation. For example, for smaller companies, it might be not so easy to comply with the UI Act because they don't have simply the staff to make sure that the company complies. But given all that, I would say that as imperfect the EU AI Act maybe is. I would say it was a kind of a try to regulate this very complex issues in a way that is based on our values, our understanding of ethics and morals. But of course, it's imperfect. So we have to improve it. But my personal opinion is that would be the wrong way to simply pause it. As some people demand right now. They say, okay, we should make a kind of a restart. For the AI Act. I mean, that's. I don't think that's the right way.
I maybe want to add a little bit of a constructive vision to that. I think we have really a dichotomy, really a stark contrast now between the US and Europe, especially when it comes to AI, which you can maybe simplify in a way that on the one hand you have for the US the paradigm of business and marketing, as Greg well knows. This is one of my favorite theses. We are not living only in the age of AI, but in the age of all-compassing marketing. And on the other hand, you have the paradigm of a certain seriousness, a certain seriousness on values and democracy. And I think in an ideal world, we would have maybe really to make a marriage between these two approaches, to have a certain innovative spirit and a progressive agenda, but on the other hand, to have a reflection on values. So the task, the huge challenge is to make a marriage between the rocket and the snail. They're two different speeds. I don't know if I'm being clear.
No, it's interesting. I'd like to ask you, Rebekka, what do you think the ethical implications for the United States on the global theater is with the way this policy rolled out? I mean, like, what would you tell us as people that are here? How are we being viewed?
I don't know, because I can't speak for society or European society as a whole, but I think there's a certain feeling of alienation. And many Europeans or many Germans I know, me included, we've always been big fans of American culture and in general and the American spirit. And we don't understand anymore what's going on. And I think we're all feeling, I have this feeling that it is also, it's always only about power. It's all boils down to power and to take over the world. And the original American manifest destiny has now extended not only to Mars, but to the whole terrestrial space, and it's all encompassing. And I think people prefer, also in Germany, prefer being comfortably numb, or amusing themselves to death to escape the seriousness of the whole thing on the one hand, and on the other hand to escape the daily soap which is coming from White House and things like that.
Yeah. Greg, what do you think about that?
I would almost have expected that word for word answer in a lot of ways, right? Because it feels that way inside the country. And I think those of us who are tuned into the global markets to some extent, obviously we're not living in Germany or England or Spain or Thailand or whatever. But I certainly, in just having conversations, whether it's conversations I've had with the two of you over time or conversations I have with others who are in international markets, we definitely hear that, right? That perception, which validates a lot of what I know I can speak, I think, at least for Geoff and I, what we feel and what we see going on that causes us to have a lot of, very high degree of discomfort with what's happening.
I mean, I think sorry, Greg, to interrupt.
Go ahead.
No, to illustrate Greg's point on that, we felt so uncomfortable with what's happening that we actually let our government contract to provide services to the federal government expire and withdrew from the market. We refused to support the market with our services, knowing what they're probably going to do with AI, whether that's to pull people off the streets and deport them illegally or worse. I mean, I there's nothing I would put past this administration to do wrong, is the way I would put it. Like, I don't think these guys have a moral compass. I think they're amoral, if that makes any sense. And so with that in mind, that puts you in a position where if you do business with them, are you
complicit?
Are you complicit? And we felt that, yes, we would be complicit if we did business with them and decided to not offer the services to them. I mean, is that fair, Greg?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. And I think this even gets us back in a way to the broader conversation that we could have, at least for a little bit, and some of the time we have left, around like democracy and the role of AI as it relates to democracy. Because we talk about how AI will democratize a whole bunch of stuff, but typically when a technology company talks about democratization, it really just means centralization, and it's not democratization at all. And you, Rebekka, mentioned, specifically, obviously, democracy is a cornerstone of the European value system. You believe very strongly in it. We believe very strongly in it as well as people. You would like to think that our country and our government believe strongly in it, and that the technology companies who are now wielding so much power believe in it. But we also know, I mean, it's no secret, no surprise, that in many ways, Facebook is complicit in Donald Trump's first election, right? And now we're seeing all of the big AI labs kowtow to, buddy up with, and ultimately, to their credit, I suppose, become partners in writing this AI action plan, where it very explicitly parrots the Silicon Valley narrative around AI. And they will be rewarded with big AI contracts from the federal government, and they're rewarded with deregulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That sounds very dystopian, but would you also, I guess, argue, the other side of it is, how can AI become a force for good, a force for supporting, growing, and building upon the democratic foundations that we've all grown up with?
Before I answer that question, I would like to entertain maybe a spooky thought experiment. I mean, I don't know if you would bet on AGI. I guess not. But let's suppose we had something like AGI in Trump's hands. What would he do with that? And philosophers like thought experiments for many reasons. I would say a good reason for such thought experiments is that if you think that through, that can make some questions clearer, can clarify the meaning. For example,
Thomas, you're putting me in
for
pain
example,
here.
now I come to your question. What we mean by a democratic AI, or an AI for good purposes, in the service of humanity, things like that. I tend to think that to answer that question, we have to make these kinds of spooky thought experiments. What could happen if things went wrong? What would happen if the Trump administration had its hands on an AGI and would classify it, what would happen then? Okay, I'll leave it to your imagination. When it comes to democracy, I would say there is a great potential in AI, but we have to realize that potential. To give you an example, you can use large language models, to provide people with different perspectives, on political issues, but you have to do it. You have to create environments, which make such things possible. But that would be a great project. For my feeling, to look for ways, for these kinds of purposes. Not to think, okay, we have this super powerful AI, call it AGI or any other name, and this AGI will do this or that. No, we humans have to do it. We have to create these kinds of applications, these kinds of platforms, environments, whatever, whether in the workplace, whether in society. I'm very worried, for example, about the use of AI in the workplace, because I think maybe that goes into the wrong direction, and we don't speak honestly about it, because there is lots of human washing, to put it that way, with the use of AI. We have to find new ways, to think about these things, for purposes for like democracy. How can we foster? How can we promote democracy with AI? That's a political question. We have to find answers to that.
And I think I just want to add one small point to that. I think it is very important, whether we're talking about democracy or the workplace, that it's a paradox indeed. In order to make good use of AI, we paradoxically need to be able to do without it in order to reflect on what we really want to do with it.
And not, unfortunately, I feel like future generations will not be able to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what's I think frightening in a lot of ways. And just as you just take the simple example of what's happening with web search today, beginning to happen, at least from search engines to answer engines, where the idea of exploring down page after page of Google links to find your sources and do your research, and now they're saying no, that's wasted effort. We're going to just serve you the answer. So rather than AI being, as Thomas described, expansive, right, where it gives you exposure to more perspectives so you can make more informed choices, it's being used in a way that is ultimately reductive, right? And it gives you the single definitive answer. And for generations that have not built their critical thinking skills, their media literacy skills, their digital literacy skills, it becomes a matter of a self-fulfilling prophecy for the reason, Rebekka, you just described, which is a generation growing up that maybe won't know how to do without it. And I think that is very scary.
Absolutely. And for me, the most scary perspective is not that some super powerful AI or AGI will wipe us all out one day, but that it makes us stupid. Makes us stupid before it wipes us out. Because I mean, when we get used, to cognitive uploading. As we see it, that's at least my observation. That we get used, not to critically think for ourselves, but to upload thinking to the machine. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Also robs us. Yeah, and it also robs us of our resilience. We are less resilient than
to compare it, with a very familiar example. I mean, but which is not entirely harmless, but maybe harmless in comparison. Let me compare that to GPS. I mean, at least in Europe, and you can take my own example. If you switch out my GPS in the car, you will find me completely helpless. So I won't find my way home. Maybe that's different. That's different. That's different in America. But I would say in analogy, something like something similar. We will observe with AI. So it's a kind of a cognitive offloading, which makes us as helpless as GPS makes us in the long run incapable of navigating our ways ourselves.
I'll give you my worst fear. I'm not going to dismiss what you're saying, but I'll give you where I think it goes off the rails, because I hear a lot of these types of things, and also complete replacement at work, right? I think the danger is that AI is going to be used to repress people. And you look at, to your point, Thomas, I'm not saying AGI, but I'm just saying regular AI in this administration's hands is a really dangerous thing, because it can be used to repress them at work. I was in the Postal Service as a contractor during Trump 1.0. And at the end of the administration, he started to police federal employees and contractors that spoke negatively about him on the systems and fired them. And I think what we're going to see is that kind of repression start to happen, not just with the government, which is already happening, but also this kind of using AI to monitor and weed out opposition. And then the workforce, even at a company, to weed out people that don't like bosses, don't like managers, that aren't towing the party line, which to some extent, friction is good for innovation, as we know. And you want people challenging things. You want people trying to do things better and to evolve the company, to evolve processes. But I do see repression happening that way. And I also see repression happening in the sense of, in a very big brother sense, going back to Orwell in 1948, literally making sure people are butts in seats doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if they're not, then terminating them. And I do see that as a really hidden element of this that people are not talking about.
But don't you think, Geoff, that AI will also lead to job replacement as a kind of repression?
I don't as much as being talked about, and that's only because I don't think the technology is as functional as people hype it up to be. So I do see it replacing 20 to 30% of your tasks. But to your point, in that vein, the employer will expect you to be that much more productive. And if you're not, then you get replaced.
But I'm afraid that employers could use AI as a kind of a tool of repression, let's say, as a threat for their employees. They, one day we could replace you with AI. So
we're already seeing that show up as a threat. Not, I think you have to look at, I think there's been obviously a number of high profile, fairly large rounds of layoffs from big companies. And typically the story in the media is that these layoffs are because of AI, when in reality, they're more likely to be because of the economic swings back and forth, the uncertainty, the way people's profit margins are getting hit, and AI might be a scapegoat in a lot of these cases. However, as long as the narrative, even just the narrative is we are replacing these entire job classes or even just your job personally with AI, it becomes that, tool of repression, even just there, because it creates this mindset of, my new digital boss is watching me, right? Or a machine can do my job. And it has, lots of negative effects. I think for better or for worse, and I think it's been an important conversation that we've had here. But I think naturally, because we see what's happening and we're putting it within the context of everything else happening outside of AI, we've hit on a lot of this sort of dark, dangerous underbelly of the revolution we're in here. Whether it's repressing workers, whether it's social engineering and, repressing entire classes of people, whether it's this sort of world domination, AI as a weapon mindset that seems to be forming here and came out of the AI action plan, whether it's China butting up against America, whether it's will Europe rise and take the moral compass? Will Europe, be sovereign in its, in the sense of sovereign AI? All of these things sound very negative. But one of the things that I know from both of you, having had conversations, from reading your magazine every time it comes out, and just for people who are listening, when I say magazine, I really mean magazine. For those watching, they saw Rebekka hold it up, like a legitimate newish print magazine that you can buy on newsstands, at least in Germany. We can get an English translated version here, digital, but I mean, that's a bold move to go old school print magazine. That's, zigging where the world zags. But anyway, we've been really kind of hitting on the sort of the downsides in a lot of ways. But I know that both of you wholeheartedly believe in a human forward future, and that it's AI for humans, not humans for AI, right? I'd love to, if we can, maybe end on a hopeful note, and I'm going to force you to kind of think like a futurist. What would you hope to see in a human forward future?
I think I want to see a new definition of specialization. It's no longer you're just human. You need to really work hard on your skills and your specialization and your expertise in whatever. But I think I like to have it the vice versa. Be special, be human, because your true specialty lies in being humane, and finding out about what you're all about. For instance, vulnerable. I think this is really exciting.
Well, my hope, maybe also my prediction is the AI will help us to solve the really big questions, to solve cancer, to solve the climate change problem, things like that. What I don't hope is that AI robs us of our creativity, of our human thinking skills. Yeah? So, but I'm confident that the human experience, with all its weaknesses, will endure in a sense, and will survive. Also, this, let me say this, or resist this kind of temptation that might come from an AI. So I'm optimistic that we as humanity will find ways to make use of AI in a way that keeps us not only in a way in the driver's seat, but maybe it's a little bit paradoxical. It keeps us in the driver's seat, but also helps us to solve problems that we are simply too stupid to solve ourselves. So in that way, I'm really confident that AI will contribute to a good future for humanity.
And that's probably a good note to end on. Where's a good place for people to learn about the work you're doing, to download a copy of the white paper, to subscribe to the magazine if they're interested?
Please follow us on LinkedIn. It's the most easy way probably. And we have also the website human-magazine.de. Then the white paper, I wanted to emphasize, the white paper is for free. You can download it for free via LinkedIn or our homepage. Please give us your feedback. We love to have your perspective and to know what you're thinking about all that.
Excellent. And just to be clear, when Rebekka says white paper, that really undersells what this is. This could be a hardcover book published and sold in bookstores around the world. It is north of 100 pages. It's got dozens of essays, all sorts of different perspectives from experts in virtually every field from across the world. It's really, really, really well done and very deep and rich in insight.
Beautiful. Awesome.
And beautifully designed, much beautifully designed like me and Geoff. But we will, of course, share all of these links in the show notes and make sure you can connect with Thomas and Rebekka online and learn more about the work they're doing with Human. With that, as our closing note, Geoff, would you like to do our typical end of show rollout into the credit?
Right. If you liked what you heard today and you enjoyed the conversation and it got you thinking, please punch the like button and share it with your friends. We welcome subscribers. We welcome feedback. You can find ways to contact us on the nobrainerpodcast.com page. And please do, if I had not already said this, do review, do subscribe wherever you might be. And with that, we are out of here. Thank you, Rebekka and Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you.